What if one of the largest objects ever to enter our solar system isn't really there? At least not in the way we think of there. When Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb published his new mathematical model on 3I Atlas, our third confirming interstellar visitor, his findings struck like a thunderclap across the scientific world. According to his equations, this colossal traveler, racing through our cosmic neighborhood at nearly 200,000 kilometers per hour, may not be a dense, rocky mountain drifting through the void. It might just be hollow. That single word, hollow, has sent shockwaves through astrophysics. For centuries, we have operated on the assumption that the wanderers between the stars are solid relics of ancient suns, frozen blocks of ice and rock, sculpted by gravity, indifferent and inert. Yet Loeb's analysis challenges that very foundation. The data, he insists, doesn't lie. The estimated mass doesn't appear to match the observed volume. The object's gravitational influence is nearly zero, and its spin rate is eerily inconsistent with any known natural body. Something about Atlas defies the logic of celestial mechanics as we know it. Let's imagine this, a vast, shell-like structure, tens of kilometers wide, gliding effortlessly through our solar system. It's not a comet, it's not an asteroid, it's something else, something that just perhaps may have been built. For Loeb, this pattern must feel hauntingly familiar. In 2017, he was the lone voice suggesting that Oumuamua, the very first interstellar object we ever observed, might be an engineer's solar sail. His peers laughed then, called it sensationalism, and moved on. But now history seems to be echoing. We have another visitor, another anomaly, and once again the mathematics are whispering the same forbidden conclusion. This object was never meant to be natural. But to understand why Loeb is so confident this time, we have to look back at Oumuamua. The scientific establishment was quick to label it a comet, but Oumuamua was a terrible comet. It had no coma, that fuzzy halo of gas and dust that appears when a comet gets near the sun and its ice turns to gas. This was a critical failure for the comet theory because Oumuamua was accelerating. It was being pushed by something other than the sun's gravity, and without a gassy jet, there was no rocket engine to explain that push. This sent theorists scrambling. A new exotic theory was proposed. Maybe Oumuamua was a hydrogen iceberg, a giant solid chunk of frozen hydrogen. This was a clever idea. Hydrogen is transparent, so it wouldn't look like a normal comet. As it evaporated, it would provide the invisible rocket thrust. But that theory collapsed under scrutiny. As Loeb and his colleagues pointed out, a hydrogen iceberg would have evaporated far too quickly in interstellar space, long before it ever reached us. Another theory suggested it was a nitrogen iceberg, a chip off a Pluto-like planet. This, too, was problematic, requiring a very specific and unlikely set of cosmic circumstances to create and send it our way. Every natural explanation we came up with seemed more fantastical than the last. This is why Loeb's hypothesis that Oumuamua was a thin, artificial solar sail being pushed by the sun's light remained so compelling. It was the only one that fit all the data. And now 3I Atlas has arrived, presenting us with the same problem, but on a grander scale. Something extraordinary happened on October 3rd, when 3I Atlas swept past Mars. This was an encounter so close, so meticulously measured, that every single gravitational twitch could have been detectable. Yet our most sensitive instruments remain silent. NASA arrays, the European Space Agency's deep space radars, even independent observatories, all reported the same confounding results. Here was a colossal object tens of kilometers wide, exerting almost no measurable gravitational pull. That shouldn't be possible. According to every law of classical mechanics I learned in school, mass creates gravity. No exceptions, no loopholes. A body estimated 33 billion tons, with a diameter rivaling a small city, should have gently tugged at the orbit of Mars. It should have distorted its thin atmosphere, or at least caused some measurable perturbation in nearby dust trajectories. But 3I Atlas passed through like a ghost, a cosmic mirage wearing the disguise of mass. So what exactly are we looking at? If the object were composed of ordinary rock or frozen volatiles, its gravity would have announced itself clearly, bending nearby trajectories like a heavy bowling ball placed on a rubber sheet. Instead, Atlas behaves as if it's made of foam or air or something far, far stranger. It's as though the visible structure we see is just a shell, a hollow exoskeleton masquerading as solidity. This paradox drives physicists to a crossroads. Either 3I Atlas is made of some exotic matter, lighter than any natural substance known to science, or it contains vast internal voids, an architecture rather than a rock. A structure so delicately balanced that it drifts through space almost free of a gravitational signature, as though it was designed to be seen but not felt. Loeb's models confirm this contradiction. Mathematically, the spin rate is too slow for its size, the density too low for its brightness, and the gravity too weak for its mass. None of it adds up unless you remove the very heart of the object, unless you imagine it as empty. And so the unsettling question emerges: is this a naturally formed hollow relic, sculpted by forces we do not yet understand? Or could it be something else? A deliberate construction designed to conceal its true nature while crossing the gulf between stars. If Atlas truly possesses the mass of a mountain, yet the touch of a feather, that somewhere within its hollow silence lies a mystery big enough to rewrite gravity itself. In science, true mysteries rarely repeat themselves. Yet here we are facing the same enigma twice. First, Oumuamua, the accelerating ship with no engine. Now 3I Atlas, the massive mountain with no weight. Two interstellar travelers, both defying gravitational logic, both arriving within a single human lifetime, a cosmological blink of an eye. Are we looking at coincidence or coordination? If Oumuamua was the opening question, 3I Atlas feels like the answer written across the sky. Loeb himself has said, when the universe sends the same problem twice, it's inviting us to evolve. And perhaps he's right. Maybe what we call anomalies are not random intrusions, but part of a larger pattern, a cosmic breadcrumb trail leading us toward comprehension. Imagine then that both objects are part of the same design, a convoy of silent messengers, each carrying fragments of a message we are not yet ready to decode. But sometimes the most unsettling discoveries don't come from our telescopes pointed outward, but from our rockets pointed upward. In the final years of her career, Giovanna Sansone, a propulsion scientist with credentials few could rival, decided to break her silence. She had spent 2 decades working alongside NASA launch systems, analyzing telemetry and thrust vectors, and perfecting the mathematics of escape velocity. Her job was precision, and yet what she and her colleagues witnessed during countless launches could not be explained by any known physics. Sansone describes it plainly, almost clinically. They appear when we try to leave. Each time humanity attempted to break free of Earth's gravity, whether sending cargo to the International Space Station or igniting the engines of a deep space probe, they were there. Not distant stars, not camera flight. These were objects moving with intent, hovering against the jet stream, executing right-angle turns at hypersonic speeds, all without inertia, without exhaust, and without sound. At first, her fellow engineers dismissed them as sensor anomalies. Then, one by one, the telemetry logs began to confirm what the naked eye had already seen. The unidentified craft didn't just appear near the launch sites. They seemed to anticipate the launches, arriving moments before ignition, almost as if they were listening for the collective pulse of human ambition. These weren't amateurs misinterpreting lights in the night sky. These were propulsion experts, radar technicians, and physicists, people who make a living from quantifying the impossible. And Sansone's testimony is not an isolated case. In fact, it's a perfect match for one of the most credible UAP encounters in military history. On November 14, 2004, Commander David Fravor, a U.S. Navy fighter pilot with the USS Nimitz Strike Group, was diverted to investigate an unknown aerial object detected off the coast of San Diego. What he saw defied his 2 decades of flight experience. It was a 40-foot-long, white, wingless object shaped like a tic-tac, hovering erratically just above the ocean. As Fravor descended to engage, the object mirrored his movements, then ascended, demonstrating an impossible rate of climb. Fravor returned to his carrier, but another jet was sent to intercept the object at its original coordinates. The tic-tac wasn't. Instead, it had reappeared at the strike group's cap point 60 miles away, a distance it would have had to cover in less than a minute. implying speeds in excess of 5,000 miles per hour. Commander Fravre's testimony was blunt. It displayed no plumes, no propulsion, and it accelerated in a way that would have produced g-forces that would turn a human to jelly. This is precisely what Sanson's team had been recording for years. One object shifting its vector by 20 degrees in a single millisecond, another maintaining a perfect hover in turbulent, high-altitude winds. When asked if she believed these were extraterrestrial vehicles, Sanson conceded, I'll use that word. She said, I call them star beings. What we're witnessing may not be technology in the way we understand it. It's more like consciousness-wearing geometry. That phrase, consciousness-wearing geometry, has since echoed through physics circles like a haunting refrain. For decades, governments have quietly cataloged similar encounters. Metallic anomalies, plasma signatures, silent accelerations beyond Mach 30. But Sanson's and Fravre's testimonies strike a different chord because they bridge disciplines between physics and philosophy, propulsion and perception. Their words suggest a chilling symmetry. As 3I Atlas enters our solar system from the distant stars, something else, described with impossible physics, seems to be watching us from the very edge of our own sky. What are these craft waiting for? Why do they appear only when humanity tries to escape its cradle? Perhaps like silent observers at the boundary of a laboratory experiment, they are studying us, not as threats or curiosities, but as students standing on the threshold of a new kind of physics. What if thought itself could bend reality? Not as a metaphor, not as mysticism, but as applied physics. In 1983, a classified CIA document known as the Gateway Experience quietly explored that very possibility. Buried for decades, it described a radical hypothesis that consciousness, the very act of our awareness, might transcend space-time, accessing information instantly across the universe. It proposed that under precise conditions, the human mind could interact directly with the quantum fabric of reality. Now, decades later, as physicist Giovanna Sanson researched the strange craft that appeared during rocket launches, she stumbled upon that forgotten file. The deeper she read, the more an unsettling idea began to crystallize. Perhaps those unidentified objects don't fly through space in the way our rockets do. Perhaps they think themselves across it. Suddenly, the impossible maneuvers described by Commander Fravre no longer seemed quite so impossible. If consciousness can influence matter at the smallest measurable scales, if the observer truly alters the observed, then an advanced intelligence might have learned to exploit that principle, not just in laboratories, but as propulsion. These star beings, as Sanson cautiously called them, may not rely on combustion or energy thrust, but on coherence, aligning their intention with the quantum probabilities that underlie space-time itself. In our conventional physics, motion requires energy. But in quantum mechanics, location isn't absolute. It's a cloud of probabilities waiting to collapse under observation. Imagine a civilization so advanced that it doesn't push its ships through the void. It simply selects where the probability of its existence will manifest next. From our limited perspective, it would look like teleportation, instantaneous, silent, untraceable. Does that sound fantastical? Perhaps, but this is no longer just the realm of declassified documents. Mainstream physics is beginning to ask the same question. Sir Roger Penrose, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, and Dr. Stuart Hameroff, an anesthesiologist, co-developed a theory called orchestrated objective reduction, or ORCHOR. Their theory proposes that consciousness is not an emergent property of the brain's biology, not just an illusion created by neurons firing, but a fundamental quantum process occurring at a much deeper level. They suggest that this process happens within the microtubules of our brain cells, tiny protein structures that they believe are perfectly structured to host quantum computations. What Penrose and Hameroff are suggesting is that our very awareness is already a quantum phenomenon. If they are right, then consciousness is not just a passenger in the universe. It is a fundamental part of its operating system. This provides a stunning scientific bridge to the gateway hypothesis. What philosophers once called the unity of mind and cosmos, our quantum era now reframes as wave function collapse. Consciousness doesn't just witness the universe, It participates in constructing it. Now imagine an intelligence millions of years ahead of us, one that understands this interaction completely. To them, consciousness is an accident of biology. It's a technology. Their craft could be extensions of their awareness, vessels of thought navigating not through engines, but through will. Could 3I Atlas, the hollow traveler now gliding past Mars, operate on this very principle? Could its emptiness be intentional? A resonant chamber designed not for fuel or crew, but for consciousness itself. If so, then we are not merely looking at an interstellar object. We are staring at a thought cast across the stars, waiting for us to realize that physics and awareness might one day be the same thing. What if the universe isn't a machine at all, but a mind? For centuries, we scientists have described the cosmos as clockwork, vast, mechanical, indifferent. But quantum physics cracked that illusion open. Beneath the visible world lies a shimmering sea of probabilities, a subatomic ocean where matter and energy blur into vibration. And the act of observation decides what becomes real. The deeper we peer into that ocean, the stranger it gets. In the famous double-slit experiment, electrons behave like waves until someone looks at them. Then they snap into particles. Reality, it seems, waits for consciousness to make a choice. The universe doesn't just unfold on its own, it responds. Now let's imagine an intelligence far older than ours, one that has long since mastered this dialogue between mind and matter. Such a civilization would not travel through space, it would reshape it. Their ships would not thrust against gravity. They would redefine the coordinates of reality itself. Movement for them would be a function of perception. Their flight would be thought in motion. And suddenly the silent maneuvers of the tic-tac witnessed by Commander Fravor, or the craft seen by Sanson's teams, no longer seem impossible. The instantaneous accelerations, the sharp right angle turns without inertia, the eerie soundless stillness in high wind. These are not violations of physics. They are upgrades of it. We, trapped within Newton's universe of forces and friction, see their actions as magic. But to them it may be as ordinary as walking through a door. If reality is indeed participatory, then perhaps every observer, every consciousness, contributes to its construction. Our thoughts, our measurements, our curiosity all ripple through that same universal field. And maybe, just maybe, when enough awareness gathers in one place. I say, during the ignition of a rocket launch or the turning of hundreds of telescopes toward a mysterious interstellar visitor, the cosmos notices. Could that be why the watchers appear when we look up? Why 3I Atlas drifts so precisely into our line of sight? At the very moment we're beginning to understand that observation itself shapes existence. If advanced civilizations have evolved within this conscious framework, then their technology is not built. It has grown, harmonized with the quantum heartbeat of reality. Their vessels might be symphonies of coherence, living geometries that move through thought instead of thrust. And if that's true, then the great cosmic question shifts entirely. The universe is no longer a cold expanse waiting for us to explore. It is a vast living mind waiting for us to understand. Maybe that's why the stars seem silent. Maybe they are not silent at all. They're simply waiting for us to learn the language of consciousness, to listen rather than transmit. What if all these mysteries, scattered across our sky, our mind and our mathematics, are not separate at all, but fragments of a single pattern waiting to be seen? In science, true revelation often comes not from discovering new facts, but from noticing the connections between old ones. And the pattern now emerging between 3I Atlas, the Nimitz testimony, Sanson's data, and the quantum frontier of consciousness research is nothing short of revolutionary. On one side, we have a hollow interstellar traveler moving through our solar system like an ancient cathedral of light. On the other, we have verified military reports of unknown craft performing impossible maneuvers just beyond our atmosphere. And somewhere in between, like a bridge linking heaven and mind, lies a Nobel Prize-winning theory suggesting that our consciousness is already a quantum phenomenon. Individually, each of these is an anomaly. Together, they begin to resemble a language. Physicists call this symmetry recognition, when apparently unrelated phenomena reveal a hidden order. Perhaps the same principle now applies on a cosmic scale. a geometry of awareness connecting distant stars to human thought. Could the hollow design of Atlas serve as an instrument, a resonant chamber tuned not for sound, but for conscious frequency? Could the craft that hover above our skies be drawn to moments when humanity's collective focus, our unified intention, distorts space-time ever so slightly, but creating ripples they can detect? It's as if the universe itself has been weaving two threads toward us, the external search for extraterrestrial intelligence and the internal exploration of consciousness. Now, for the first time, those threads are intertwining. Avi Loeb's equations whisper of deliberate engineering. David Fravre's eyes testify to impossible propulsion. And Roger Penrose's math suggests the engine for it all might be consciousness itself. When we view them together, these aren't just coincidences. They're harmonics of the same cosmic frequency. Maybe what we're witnessing isn't alien visitation in the traditional sense, but communication through resonance, a dialogue between intelligences separated not by distance, but by understanding. If that's true, then 3i Atlas is not simply a visitor. It's a mirror, a vast drifting reflection of our own awakening awareness. Its hollowness becomes symbolic, the emptiness required for an echo. Just as a violin needs a hollow body to produce music, perhaps the universe itself requires vast silence to amplify consciousness. So when we look at Atlas through our telescopes, we may not just be studying a physical object. We may be gazing into the architecture of a message, one written in the oldest language there is, the geometry of thought itself. And that realization forces us to ask a question no instrument can measure. Is the universe trying to get our attention? Or have we at last begun to hear it? What if 3i Atlas isn't merely a visitor but an invitation? A mirror held up to humanity at the very moment we begin to glimpse the deeper architecture of reality itself. For centuries we've asked, are we alone? But perhaps that was never the right question. Perhaps the true question is, can we perceive what's been here all along? If Atlas is truly hollow, could it be more than a comet? Could it be a vessel? A resonant chamber built not for passengers, but for consciousness. Could it be that the same quantum principles binding thought and matter, the principles of Penrose and Hameroff? And if so, who or what first discovered how to turn awareness into technology? Maybe the watchers above our launch sites, the tic-tacs that outmaneuver David Fravre, aren't here to interfere, but to witness. To observe a young civilization standing on the threshold of cosmic adulthood, experimenting with the same forces that connect mind and matter. Could our collective active curiosity, our telescopes, our equations, our awe, be the very signal they've been waiting for? If consciousness truly shapes the fabric of the cosmos, then every act of observation becomes a dialogue, every measurement a whisper into the void. And maybe, just maybe, the void is whispering back through objects like 3i Atlas, subtle reminders that awareness is not confined to Earth, but is woven into the starlight itself. So we must ask ourselves, when we gaze at Atlas, are we studying an alien artifact, or are we witnessing the universe studying us? Because if reality is conscious, then humanity's greatest experiment has already begun. Not in a lab, but in our own mind. If the universe truly watches us back, what do you think it sees?